Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant and I'm back with some more vibe for yeah. And this one we're going into here is the animated history of Switzerland. Yes, you know what I mean. And Switzerland is one of them type countries there where they kind of neutral and thing, but I don't know the history. So I'm not gonna get fooled like with Sweden, and then I did the Swedish history, and it's like, whoa, what's going on there? You know what I mean? I hope you guys enjoy this one. Stay till the end. I'm going to like give a little insight and thing, you know what I mean? But I ain't gonna keep all you too long. Let's YouTube and simmer.
This episode is supported by World of Tanks. Thank you to all of these nice people for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to join them and also get a free Sweeney enamel pin, you can do so at patreon.com/Sweeney. Also guys, the merch store has a 20% off for Black Friday promo going on up until December 3rd, so if you want to get some merch, you can use the code Black Friday at checkout. Thanks.
Let's go! Sweden! Switzerland. Switzerland.
What is Switzerland?
Yeah.
And who are the Swiss? Sorry to get all metaphilosophical on you, but I mean, come on, just look at the place. Ask anyone and you'll get a variety of answers. It's the country with the cows and the cheese. Okay, that's not helpful. What about the Swiss language? German, right? Except German people can't seem to understand it, and also some Swiss people speak French, Italian, and a fourth one everyone seems to forget. This is even less helpful. Here we go, the origins of the Swiss nation-state.
Let's
this
go.
should clear things up. Ancient Switzerland was dominated by the Helvetii and the Rhaetians, who flourished in the Holstein culture, living side by side in the valleys of the Alps before being conquered by the Romans.
There we go, the
So
Romans
far,
in action.
so good. When the Romans fell, the Alps became the crossroads for Germanic tribes like the Alemanni and the Lombards invading the empire. So there we have our answer. The Swiss are just a weird mishmash of Celtic, Germanic, and Roman people without their own identity. Turns out the truth resists simplicity. Look a little closer and we can find something that united these people over all those centuries. Alpine transhumance.
Huh. Never
What
heard
the
of
heck
that.
is transhumance? I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Transhumance is the process of droving livestock to higher pastures in the summer to low valleys in the winter. Sounds almost too simple, right? Well, it's actually far more important to the fabric of the Swiss identity than we think. The seasons and the mountains dictated literally everything. Where you lived, what kind of house you built, what you found to eat, and what trade routes you were on.
Understandable.
The Swiss were tied together by the Alps, passing down their way of life from culture to culture for centuries, laying down a nationalistic identity deeper than religion, monarchy, or even what language they spoke.
Cool.
The Swiss were Swiss long before Switzerland even existed. Alright, this intro's gone on long enough.
Oh, is that the Germans coming?
Borders separate people. They separate trade, culture, food,
True
and
that.
language. Some borders are man-made, such as the ones we have today, but nothing separates humans like natural borders. Rivers, oceans, deserts, and in this case, mountains. The Swiss Alps form the border between the Germanic, Franco, and Italic language families. Okay, that was easy. Let's talk about Reichsfrei. The Holy Roman Empire granted the state of Reichsfrei to cities or areas that were difficult to get to or largely self-sufficient, like, for example, the Alps. It made them self-governing, with no count, lord.
I tell you, man, the Alps, I don't know why I'm so intrigued by the Alps. I guess it's the same thing with the Andes for me, but I really want to go to the Alps because I think it's going to be really beautiful there, you know what I mean? And whenever you see documentaries or something about this like Switzerland and all the places that the Alps run through, it's always gorgeous there, man, you know what I mean? And I don't like snow, but for some reason, that's something I want to see, you know? I want to go there and check that out. Let's keep going.
Or due to answer to. Only the emperor. Three Alpine cantons, Schweiz, Uri, and Unterwalden, were granted Reichsfrei to govern the trade route linking Italy to the empire. Together, they were Waldstaaten, forest cantons, and their relationship with each other grew over time. They worked together on matters of trade and eventually defense in a series of treaties. Why the need for treaties, though? Turns out these areas really loved their Reichsfrei status. Ruling themselves high up in the mountains was a pretty sweet gig, and when an Austrian royal family started eyeing up their land, they were quick to retaliate. We don't need no hungry Habsburgs eating up our villages and towns into a conglomeration of hereditary states, forcefully perpetuated by selective marriage alliances including but not limited to incest, which, they could have just gone with like, fight the power or something. The Habsburgs, of course, were that infamous Austrian noble house that practiced some pretty land-hungry marriage policies. But they actually had their start in modern-day Switzerland, coincidentally, so we all learned something new today. The forest cantons banded together and drove the Habsburgs out of their land, and at the Battle of Mortgarten, the Swiss were allegedly so brutal that they gained a reputation as bloodthirsty warriors.
What?
The Swiss
Here we go again.
of all people.
Yeah.
Right? Bet you weren't expecting that.
No.
The three became known as the Alte Eidgenossenschaft, but we just called them the Old Swiss Confederacy, Swiss coming from the canton of Schweiz. The three cantons soon became 8. The cities of Lucerne, Zurich, Glarus, Bern, and Zug also weren't fans of the stinky Habsburgs and liked the cut of the Confederates' jib. So, one by one, they all became members of the Confederacy in an eternal alliance. The Habsburgs, thoroughly unamused, thought this whole Confederacy thing had gotten way out of hand and it was time to put an end to it. Twice they attempted to retake the Confederacy's land, and twice they were repelled. Mortgarten was no fluke victory. The Swiss were just really good at fighting. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the Swiss action.
But I mean, are they good at fighting, or are they good? They just wanted to hold up their autonomy, I guess, hold up their beliefs and things like that. When they believe, hey, see, for me, that's patriotism. When somebody invade your country and you fight them off to keep your own identity, that's patriotism. Going to somebody else's country and fighting them there, unless of course there's some kind of a attack or something that you're going up against, or retaliation or whatever. But for me, if I'm home and somebody's coming to me and I'm fighting, to keep my own identity and my own land and stuff, that's patriotism. Of course, I've always leave a little leeway there. Like the Second World War, that was kind of necessary. One guy was trying to take over everything, according to the narrative. Well, it's the truth. No, I understand that. But you know what I mean? In times of when there is no imminent world danger and they're just going in there just to get the natural resources of the place, that's not patriotism, because who's going to get who's going to profit from that? What's going to happen is the rich is going to get rich, and a whole group of people is going to hate everybody here, not realizing the rich is the one that instigated this so that they could keep the riches. I remember a certain person a certain president saying, why wouldn't we just go in there and take the oil? Patriotism, it's just a group of people being greedy, trying to get everything for themselves. And the poor there and the poor wherever the places that's doing the invasion, they don't get nothing.
Freiburg, Neuchâtel, and Solothurn joined as associates of Bern. Appenzellernd broke away from the Abbey of St. Gall. Aargau was conquered after its duke was exiled for supporting the anti-pope. And yes, anti-pope is a real thing. The German-speaking half of the Prince-Bishopric of Sion broke away from the Dukes of Savoy, and Schaffhausen and St. Gallen became associates.
Wow.
The last player we'll be looking at is the Grissons.
You didn't have to conquer them. That's all.
At the time between three alliances: the Grey League, the 10 jurisdictions, and the League of the House of God. The area was notable for its Romansh-speaking population, the often forgotten fourth stepchild of Switzerland, remnants of the old Romanized Rhaetian people from the days of the Roman Empire. Okay, so the map is beginning to look a lot more like the Switzerland we all know and love. Not without some hiccups though, like the old Zurich War and the Rouen affair, which would nearly collapse the whole thing, but soon enough, these brothers' bonds would be sealed in warfare. Firstly, the Confederates conquered the Thurgau, which really upset the Habsburgs. In retaliation, Sigismund of Austria made a deal with Charles the Bold of Burgundy to attack the Swiss in exchange for land. However, ironically, the Habsburgs and the Swiss ended up working together against Charles in the Burgundy Wars after he took the land without delivering on his part of the deal. The Swiss and the Habsburgs defeated Charles 3 times in battle, in the last of which he was killed.
Man, the Swiss kicking
The Swiss
butt.
proverb was coined: Charles the Bold lost his goods at Conson, his boldness at Merton, and his blood at Nancy. To try and ensure this wouldn't happen again, the Habsburgs decided to set up their own confederacy with blackjack and called the Swabian League, and the two became fierce rivals. Maximilian I then tried to annex land in the Grisons to control the Umbriel Pass, and had passed reforms in the Diet of Worms to centralize his power over the empire. This erupted the Swabian War, and the Habsburgs, together with their Swabian League, were swiftly defeated.
Man,
The two wars had numerous
Switzerland just kicking
consequences.
butt.
Along with creating a sense of unity, it had allowed the Swiss to assert themselves as a strong military power, able to project its influence outward, west to the
Oh, you
Jura
see?
Mountains, and south
Now
to
they
the
starting to
Latina
take
Valley,
land.
a traditional Lombard Italian-speaking area. Right, let's do an overview. Switzerland is starting to look and feel pretty Swiss. But there was still the matter of what being Swiss actually meant. These cities had banded together in opposition to the Burgundians, French, and Austrians. But what exactly were they now? Well, let's take a look at what the Swiss had to offer the world. Cows. Okay, but not nation defining. Skiing? Nah, that won't be for another few centuries. Fighting? Maybe we're onto something here. Turns out the Burgundian Wars had given the Swiss a bit of a reputation as incredible warriors. In a time when Europe was moving away from feudal levies toward career soldiers, Swiss soldiers became highly prized. Makes sense, right? The Swiss were basically stuck in the mountains all day, defending their valleys and trade routes, quietly getting really good at fighting. Having a Swiss contingent in your army could mean the difference between victory and defeat. And just like that, the Swiss mercenary industry was born. Everyone wanted them in their armies. The mercenaries were so effective that the elite members were sought after as bodyguards, a sort of late medieval personal detail for royal courts all over Europe.
Wow.
The top echelon of these guards were the 100 Swiss, the bodyguards of the kings of France, and the Pontifical Swiss Guard of the popes in Rome.
Pontifical Swiss
Having a
Guard.
Swiss Guard force was kind of a badge of honor, since they were seen as fiercely loyal, capable, and would fight to the death with honor. Now it's time to talk about something that, according to my comments, I didn't go into nearly enough detail about in my Italy video, the Italian Wars. I'll let you guess where they were fought. The Italian Wars were basically a dispute between the rising powers at the time for influence over Europe. France, the Habsburgs, Spain, Venice, and the papacy, and Italy was their battleground. The wars themselves were long and complicated and ultimately fruitless, other than setting the stage for a rivalry between the enormous Habsburg Empire of Charles V and his French and Ottoman enemies, which admittedly became quickly overshadowed by Charles dealing with a troublesome monk at home, publicly declaring that the Catholic Church was corrupt and illegitimate. His Protestant ideas would ring with some of the German leaders, beginning the Schmalkaldic War. Charles soon realized that the whole thing simply wasn't worth the headache and signed the Peace of Augsburg, legalizing Protestantism, before abdicating and dividing his empire. Don't worry, buddy, ain't no shame in quitting. So, why did I bring up the seemingly unrelated war in the first place? Turns out the Swiss were instrumental to the conflict. Everybody wanted Swiss mercenaries, and war is good for business. The Swiss fought on all sides and profited.
See what I'm saying? War has always been good for business, boy. You know what I mean? Back then was more so bodies than it was equipment. You know, because the Swiss soldiers here were like really good. And right before I cut it off, he said they were fighting on all sides, making that money. War is money, y'all.
Benefited greatly off of the seemingly never-ending conflicts. But let's get back to that monk. He was, of course, Martin Luther, the father of the Reformation. His teachings would have a profound impact on a Swiss preacher, Ulrich Zwingli. And boy, do we have to talk about Zwingli. The humanist preacher from St. Gallen stunned onlookers in Zurich in an act of defiance when he publicly called for the people to partake in the sacrilegious and downright blasphemous sin of eating sausages. That's right, he defied the church by claiming that the practice of not eating meat during the time of Lent was unscriptural and should be voluntary, not mandatory. The event became known as the Affair of the Sausages. Soon enough, the Reformation had
The
taken
affair
a
of
hold
the
of Switzerland,
sausages.
with some of the cantons switching over to the Protestant faith. I wonder where this will go. Now, the Protestant Reformation, you may recall, had a massive impact on the European continent. It kick-started the German Peasants' War against serfdom, the French expulsion of the Huguenots, the Catholic Counter-Reformation, and eventually the 30 Years' War, one of the
Wow.
bloodiest conflicts in European history. Now, because all sides of the war had used Swiss mercenaries, Switzerland basically stayed out of the war. But soon, the continent got tired of butchering
Stayed
each other
neutral
and
by
sat down to
fighting.
negotiate peace in Westphalia. After signing the agreement, the European powers capped off the meeting by recognizing Switzerland as independent, then tossed them the keys and told them to lock up. Thanks, I guess. So Switzerland is now fully independent, and Europe is at peace. Other than dealing with some local things, they kind of just sat around for a while, with not much to do. Okay, just kidding. Let's talk about Swiss neutrality. Although their mercenaries fought in nearly every war, and the Swiss Guard were the bodyguards of dozens of monarchical courts, the Swiss themselves stayed out of wars in the early modern period. Why? Turns out the Europeans had become so dependent on Swiss mercenaries that neither side wanted the Swiss to land in the hands of the other. So everyone kind of just mutually agreed that Switzerland was neutral territory. You leave it alone, we leave it alone. Everyone can buy mercenaries, and everybody wins. Especially the Swiss, who profited greatly off of the wars. After all, if you're good at something, never do it for free. The situation reached its zenith during the French Revolution. The old Confederacy became the Helvetic Republic, and then the new Confederacy, both client states of France. Now, we all know how this story ends with Napoleon being defeated at Waterloo because he couldn't escape if he wanted to. But as for the Swiss, the Europeans sat down at the Treaty of Paris and formally guaranteed Swiss neutrality, disbanding the Swiss mercenaries and the Swiss Guard, once and for all. The ideas of the revolution being fully put into place in 1848 after the Civil War of the Sonderbund, formally federalizing Switzerland into a modern, constitutional, and federal nation state.
See how it all came together?
Was Swiss, and its citizens, no matter what language, background, or religion, were given freedoms and rights by their government. And surprisingly enough, they remained fiercely loyal to that doctrine of armed neutrality, staying out of the First and Second World War even when compelled by others to get involved. It allowed for the growth of the Swiss banking industry, a controversial topic to this day, as well as making it a haven for revolutionaries, some of whom history has not been kind to. Something that embodies the Swiss legacy for me has always been the final last stand of the Swiss Guard in revolutionary France. Revolutionaries stormed the palace at Tuileries to capture the king, whom they didn't know had already fled, and the Swiss Guard fought to the death in one last triumphant stand to protect their king. This monument of the Swiss lion protecting the coat of arms of the French king, wounded and dying, was carved into the stone wall at Lucerne to remember their sacrifice. The last remnant of the Swiss Guard today are the Pontifical Swiss Guard, who serve the Pope in the Vatican City, complete with old regalia. But bear in mind, the actual Swiss Guard on duty are not on display. They're probably somewhere where you can't see them, but they can see you. Switzerland today embodies neutrality. Some criticize this stance, claiming that by not standing for anything, they also don't stand up to anything, such as in the case of the Second World War, when they refused to enter the war against the injustices of the Third Reich and the fascist regimes, while still others applaud the neutrality stance. As for me, I don't know, I'm going Switzerland on this one. But you don't have to. You can take the fight to those regimes in World of Tanks. The free-to-play, massive multiplayer online game is the best way to start off with. Give the game a try. Well,
okay, I think that's the end of that there. Oh, man, they managed to stay neutral in the First and the Second World War. Build up their Swiss banks and stuff. Make all that money with all that rich people putting their money in there. See, every country has its past where there's been violent. And I mean, that's not surprising by any stretch of the imagination. It's just wild, you know what I mean? That the idea of them being constantly neutral right now, as we speak, you know what I mean? That's what they've been known for the last, few decades or something like that. But anyway, I'll leave a link in the description for this video. Go check it out. Go check out this channel, you know, the animated histories and stuff like that. I'm quite sure you will enjoy it. And I want to thank you all for watching this with me and thing, you know what I mean? I enjoy watching these videos, man. This one was really cool. You know, I saw it and I was like, oh, gots to do it, man. Gots to do it. Anyway, man, y'all take care of each other. Where I am, I'm going to try to stay warm. If you're where you are and it's cold, try to stay warm there too. Take care of each other, alright? Cool runnings.